Please join me in welcoming back to the stage Oualid Mouaness.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you all for being here as well. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'd love to begin with a question about where the story came from. I believe there's some autobiographical elements. Can you talk about the writing process and the story development?
There are some autobiographical elements. The biggest autobiographical element is this is exactly how I remember that day. So it's I was in love. It didn't have as happy an ending. But we did end up leaving the school. Yeah, I mean, it's based on my last day of school in Lebanon in 1982, and I think a lot of us have experienced this in Lebanon. So, and it's being experienced now worldwide. So,
and in revisiting it, what made you want to include the animation and to add that texture to what looks like a incredibly precise on period piece in many ways, but then adding in this animation? Why did you want to do this?
I was obsessed with something called Grandizer when I was a kid. And I used to try to imitate him, and I failed miserably. So I decided I wanted to make him real in this. And in the writing process, I just needed an out, because when I was writing this piece, it was very difficult to write. And it just had I just wanted to reject the invasion, so I wanted someone to save it, and so Wissam created the hero to save Beirut. So.
And in terms of the, oh yeah, please, remember I like applause. Yes, I was about to say that. And I think there's a few people you wanted to bring up on stage.
Yes, I have a team of wonderful producers and artists, a production designer, director of photography, and part of my producing team here. I would love all of you to come down on stage, please. Don't be bashful. Jessica.
And while we're waiting too, I was asking about the animation, and
so the animation I developed with this amazing Lebanese director animator. His name is Ghassan Halwani, who I believe, yes, he's a friend.
Was here last year with the film as well.
He was here last year with a wonderful film.
So
that was very moving and also addressed some very important things in the Lebanese war.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you so much for joining us as well.
So I will. Who's missing? Louis.
Jessica.
Louis. Jessica. So I'm gonna just pass the mic. I'm gonna just pass the mic so that my team introduces themselves. I will start with. Go ahead.
Hey everybody, I'm Cesar El Hayek. I'm the production designer.
Someone else that's missing here. There's someone else. Ingrid, where are you? Ingrid? I'm like, wait a minute, that's not complete yet. Sorry. Okay.
Never mind.
Cesar Hayek, production designer. Yeah. Yes. He was very patient with me.
Brian Rigney-Hubbard, director of photography.
Chris Allender, one of the producers.
Dariush Derek-Shani, VFX producer.
Jessica Khoury, production supervisor.
Louis Nader, one of the producers.
Ingrid Lill Högtun, co-producer.
Thank you, guys.
Before I open it up to the audience, I also wanted to ask about the approach. You know, as we said off the top, this is a cataclysmic moment in Lebanese history, but you wanted to explore it through a different lens, and I want to know why that was important to you.
The most important thing for me about this is, first of all, I wanted to approach this from a lens I knew and I understood. And there's so many facets to what happened in Lebanon, and this is one of the facets. And it's the facet that I knew best, and I needed to present it. Because I think no matter where you were in Lebanon at that time period, there was no way that you weren't impacted by what was going on. And we've all been marked by this, and we all carry it with us, and we're all trying to deal with it and have dealt with it. And this was my way of doing this. Yeah.
As I said, I would like to open it up to the audience. If there are any questions, I just ask that you raise your hand nice and high. I will also repeat the question for the benefit of people who might not have heard. Yes, right here on the aisle.
I'm
just
here.
let me the question was whether the kids made it or not. But
Yes. Yes, the kids made it. There were a lot of schools that were impacted in Lebanon during that invasion, actually close to 200 schools. But the thing is about Lebanon and Lebanese people is education is very important. So no matter what class you come from, people just will, that's one of the most important things that happen, that we persevere with. So.
The question is whether or not you had a chance to reconnect with anybody that you had been in touch with at that time.
I'm actually connected to 3 friends from that school from that period, yes. And one of them whose kids I wanted to be in the movie, he said no.
Yes, here. So the question is in regards to the juxtaposition and what you would hope that use would elicit in response from the audience.
My approach to the film is, from the onset, is as naturalistic as possible. I try to be as realistic as possible to that moment in time and that feeling. And the film I built the film in 2 parts. The first part is a paradise, which is something that we're very familiar with, which is the day-to-day, what an exam day feels like. I sort of wanted to get my audience into that space. And the second part of it is essentially Paradise Lost, where you have this beast that is war, that is outside of our control. And I think what we fail to see and know through the news and through everything that happens every day is that whenever war is broadcast or seen, all we see is that big picture of things. And I wanted really to take you into the human side of it, into the people who are not involved, who are very impacted. And I wanted us to live through this. I want the audience to kind of feel that impact. And it does get quite intense in the film. And it has been quite intense for us. And a lot of us choose at one point to just leave when things don't change. And I wanted the film to get to a point where you're like, you just want out. And the out for me is Wissam's imagination, which is the arrival of Tigran.
Yes, right here. Yes, yeah. So the question is in regards to the end of the film and specifically the significance of the pigeons.
The pigeons, basically in Lebanon, we have a culture where there's people who raise pigeons on their roofs and they usually can control them. And those pigeons have a home. And usually if a pigeon is lost, it looks for another home. And in this case, that's what the pigeons are. They're pigeons who have come from another city. I know it's a very quiet motif in the film, but also I do think that motif sort of gives us a moment to reflect on what we've just watched and what we've just experienced, because these are the people, there's people who actually have lost a lot in this. Maybe it's not what I'm filming, but it is what I'm implying.
Yes, right here.
Do you want to answer this?
So the question is a surprisingly complicated one, and it's in regards to the language. Yes,
I'm gonna have one of my peers answer this.
So in Lebanon, we're basically bilingual. We speak French and English, and most of the schools are taught either in French or in English. In this particular school, it's English because it's a English curriculum. For instance, I was in a non-school, so it was in French. So it is very common for everybody to be brought up in such a system. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you. Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So the question is in regards to the children, the cast overall, and then of course Nadine Labaki, and whether or not she had a role in that, given her last film also involved young kids on screen.
The most incredible thing about having Nadine in the classroom was actually at first, because the kids were very enamored, so it took them a minute to get used to her. But as an actor, Nadine is also a friend. So she was in the midst of Capernaum, and as a matter of fact, she didn't participate in my working process with the kids at all. She came on set and she really wanted to be an actor, and where I think it was amazing is how she dealt with the kids that she was working with on an individual level, and the little prep work that we worked on prior to the scenes that they shot together. But she wasn't part of the training and the rehearsal process.
In the back in the white shirt. So the question is in regards to why not shooting more of the children leaving for West Beirut, and how maybe this then might have held a little more hope. So in essence, why? And then in that case, then develop the love story a little bit more to, again, maybe offer hope that way.
As in, sorry, just to clarify, as in, why didn't I take the story forward and follow the kids into after what happened after the school? There is a story there. It would be another movie. But for me, with this film, I just felt like I wanted to address this period in our history that nobody's talked about, and at the same time, I wanted to address it in a way that I know, and to really stem it from my experience, which is why I didn't go deep into the war zone after the fact. So I just felt like I had to be emotionally truthful to where I was going, what I knew how to say, and what I wanted to say. Does that make sense? Thank you.
Can I say something about this? Absolutely. Yeah. So I remember the first time I got the script for this movie, and reading through it, and then arriving at the end, I remember just crying my eyes out. And I just did the same thing when the movie ended now. Because I think it's so beautiful that we don't see what happened after that, because we can have our imagination just running wild and vivid into what can happen as an alternative reality. Because most of us, like Oualid said, we went through this. Like this is part of our history. This is part of our existence. And just the idea of having someone or a notion or something else just come in and change that and give an idea for hope is already an amazing thing, without going into, I'm not going to say mundane, but it's more like an abstract and poetic idea of what can happen. And this is why I love this film so much, because it just gives you this idea of a different kind of hope. Like not the hope that you see on TV, but like a kid's idea of hope, which is so phenomenal to see on screen. So yeah.
Thank you, Cesar. Brian. Thank you. That was the intention, is we should never forget, but we should never let it happen again. So
We do have time for one more question. Yes, here in the middle. So the question is in regards to how the children came from both East and West Beirut, but didn't necessarily reflect the positions of their parents. And maybe in answering that too, for people who might not be familiar, couldn't you explain the divide at the time?
The Eastern, well, okay. That's a... Right. During the war, Lebanon was, yes, Lebanon was divided between East and West Beirut, and it was kind of by default, to some degree, along, I would say, sectarian line, less sectarian, more the left and the right, really. And then there were a few people that actually did go across, and there were very few households that were very tolerant of that. The school I went to, which is what this film is based on, is before the Lebanese war started, was almost purely a Quaker school, not Quaker in the religious sense, but Quaker in sort of an inclusive sense of the word. And also this is the ethic that I grew up in my household. And it's there is an awareness. It's just like that the awareness is not necessarily as polarizing or polemic as the awareness in the parents. And the character of Majid, who is actually more aware a little bit of the world to some degree, he kind of knows the difference between East and West Beirut, especially when he addresses his mother. That becomes very clear until he actually puts her on the spot and asks her, why is it different there than here? And she really did not have an answer, because the answer is too painful to say.
I am getting the signal that we have to wrap up the Q&A there, but I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you all so much for sharing the film with us. A big round of applause for 1982.
Thank you. Thank you.